Welcome back, everybody, to the Denver Dzogchen podcast. I'm here once again with Joseph Wagner, and today we're going to discuss a topic that's been requested by one of our viewers, and that is pure vision. What is it? How do you cultivate it? How does it actually look as a practice? And I think this is a really important question because it isn't always clear. Like the way that this is presented, especially to the public, is a little bit hard to access. And some of that's intentional because some of this isn't really public teachings, right? Some of this is secret. And so we won't be able to go into everything. But I think we'll be able to generally introduce the topic and talk about how you might get started with this. So, Joe, welcome. And maybe you can give us a few of your opening thoughts.
Hello, Damien. Hello, everyone. Isn't this awesome? We've got a lot of podcasts out. I just saw the number. It was pretty high. So thank you to all of you for being part of this. And if you weren't interested, then we wouldn't be doing it. And it gives me a chance to think about these things and Damien and I to connect about them. It's really good. So thank you. I'm glad we're talking about this topic because I just got back from a trip to India, which is a place where if you don't have pure vision, then you're going to die immediately because it's so intense and difficult. But I did learn a few interesting things about pure vision, received a few teachings, and one of them was specifically about this topic. But before we go into all that stuff, I thought might as well place it within the general context of Buddhism. In Buddhism, there are three sort of aspects of vehicles, really just two, but we break the Mahayana into Mahayana and Vajrayana, of course. The Theravada position or the general outlook, the hallmark is renunciation, recognizing that suffering comes from grasping, and so we're going to cut it off at the root by turning away from grasping and turning away from desirable objects in general. And this was the path of the Buddha. It's the path of all practitioners on some level. Even in the most, I'm practicing a Guru Yoga sadhana from the Longchen Nyingtik cycle, and right in there it says, may I turn my back on samsara, may I turn away from worldly concerns. This is the renunciation aspect. It's the foundation of all Buddhism, but it's the hallmark of the Theravadan school. In Mahayana, that hallmark changes to compassion, to practicing the paramitas for the goodness of all beings, for the well-being of everyone, recognizing we're all kind of like balloons tied together at the bottom. Individually, we look individual and the balloon aspect, but when you follow the string down, we're connected to everyone. Therefore, if Damien gets enlightened, I go up a little bit. And if somebody else who I'm connected to is like spiraling out of control down, I'm affected. This is obvious, right? If you have a friend who, say a friend is in a deep depression or is an alcoholic or something really tough, you're also affected by that. It's not like you're a totally separate being, right? So this recognition leads to the hallmark of the Mahayana being compassion. And then if we take Vajrayana as a separate vehicle in the sense that it's like quite different from standard Mahayana, the hallmark of the Vajrayana is pure perception. It is both the method by which we transform the world and our experience in the world, and also the goal in that once the world is completely transformed into purity, then we've already attained enlightenment. So this is the way that I understand the three vehicles and the relationship of pure perception to Buddhism in general.
Yeah. And seeing it in that framework, what I think the most important thing to recognize is that the scaffolding is getting lighter and more subtle the more you go up these paths, right? So kind of like living on a cushion and only eating a very small amount. And this is a very coarse way of approaching the path, right? Like it's mostly having to do with your body and your physical experience. And then in the Mahayana, it's a little more emotional, relational. You're getting into that kind of like service of others and compassion, and the four measurables being your emphasis. And then as again, the Vajrayana, it's even more subtle because it's energetic and working directly with that push and pull of I want it and I don't want it, at a really subtle level. I think the big mistake people think is that visualization is like imagination in the service of belief, that they're just like doing this to try to change their mind, right? But really, it's about correcting our perception. It's actually closer to how things are, not a new additional delusion that we put in on top of things to try and fix the, I think that's what people get tripped up on. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about that, like how this is not an additional layer you're pouring onto your experience.
Yeah, that's well said. You covered all the important points. Tulku Urgyen, my Lama, my root Lama, used to say that same thing. He used to say, when we're doing visualization, we're not overlaying something we wish were true on the world. We're actually seeing things more like they actually are. And this is one of the sort of secrets of pure perception, and also what makes it have so much resonance for us, is if it were just an overlay, kind of like the belief that, like The Secret, if you're familiar with that old sort of style of mental control, and it can work a little bit. You're sort of saying like everything's good, everything's good. It's like even if things, it's a little out of alignment with reality to some degree. Interestingly, the Vajrayana pure perception, which at its most, I was going to say extreme, but we'll call it supreme form, sees all beings as deities, is actually closer to how things really are than believing everything is good. I think pure perception has to do a little bit with the fact of the two truths, which is something we could talk about in another podcast because it's a big topic. But the relative truth of ordinary reality, which we share, if you and I both watch a basketball game, which would be bizarre for both of us. Let's just say it happened, and we were both rooting for the same team, we would have the similar experience of that. If we both go to a restaurant, a Vietnamese vegan restaurant, which I intend to go to with you when I come out there next, we both could have a similar experience. This is like relative reality, right? The day is sunny or the day is snowy. We both perceive that. Okay, great. What we overlay on that is, geez, I was supposed to go on a bike ride today. Now it's snowing. I can't go. What am I going to do with my day? This sucks. Um, that is our own personal experience, but it's still of the relative reality. And then there's our experience, to whatever degree is possible, of the actual nature of reality, the supreme level of reality, which is primordially pure and without concepts and beyond good or bad, liking and disliking, and so forth. So when we're talking about pure perception, we are using which is what usually a kind of psychological or mental understanding of pure perception, because it's not our true understanding, at least not in my case most of the time, or maybe ever, and overlaying that on relative reality in order to relate to relative reality in a way that's more beneficial for the path, more beneficial and enjoyable for ourselves, and more beneficial for those around us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, the most accessible way to this whole thing has been through Guru Yoga. You can do it through deity yoga and vast mandala practice, but most of us don't have time for this. But the simple kind of everything in your life is a blessing from the Guru. If it's positive, that's a blessing from the Guru. If it's so-called negative, that's a purification blessing from the Guru, or like a challenge or a test being put forward. For me, this is the simplest way to begin to reorient myself to seeing everything in service of the path and not having so much I want, I don't want going on, and have more equanimity towards everything, and starting to see the purity of things and beings as offerings, teachings, tests from the Guru, and the Guru being inseparable from me. So this mind being in the mind of the Guru, and everything being that perception, that's the most accessible entry point I've found for this kind of experience.
I like that Damien always comes from above. He's like the highest level, and that's what I'm doing. I'm like, I'm kind of coming from below, but you're absolutely right. This is the ultimate way. I mean, in this same practice I'm engaging in, this Guru Yoga from the Longchen Nyingtik, it says the generation stage. It's talking about the two stages of practices. In the generation stage, where all appearances arise as the Guru. That's exactly what you're saying, right? When we take the Guru Yoga to heart, and we believe what is said in the Vajrayana, which is that as soon as you enter the path of the Vajrayana, your experience changes in the sense that everything that occurs, no matter how outlandish or intimate, is an exact gift from your teacher. When good things happen, we're supposed to think, oh, thank you, Lama, for this beautiful day. Thank you so much for this amazing meal, whatever. And when bad things happen, we're supposed to say, ah, good, I'm purifying some karma. Because on the path of the Vajrayana, the goal is liberation in one life, either in this body, as a rainbow body or some sort of super realized being, at the time of death, the actual moment of death, when you don't go through the bardo, but you're liberated, or in the bardo, you recognize the yidam or your teacher or whatever, or further down the path, you rise in purom, nirmanakai purom. All of those have to do with liberation in this life, meaning not going to take another birth. And in order to do that, it's important as Vajrayanists or any Buddhist to realize we have so much negative karma. We are always carrying around incredible amount of habitual tendencies, of wrong views, of bad habits. This body is only karma, and it's almost entirely negative because it's going to die, right? It's impermanent, and it's our vehicle, and it's unreliable, all this stuff. So just to recognize that our experience in the world is almost entirely karmic. And when you embrace what Damien is saying and you see that good things are a blessing and you feel rejoicing, and bad things, bad in quotation marks, sometimes they really are, they really certainly do feel bad. I'm not, lowering that. Life can be extremely challenging. Um, that as a purification, what it means is we need to remove a great deal of karma in order for any of these levels of liberation to occur in this life. Otherwise, we wind up born again, and almost all of our reactions are karmic reactions, right? Something happens to us and we react. And that reaction itself creates more karma, so we just keep, cycling. So it is skillful means, and also in accordance with the truth that whatever happens to us is a blessing from the Guru once you've entered the path. And entering the path can be as simple as taking refuge. It's true at the Mahayana level, it's true at the Hinayana level, but it's made explicit in the Vajrayana, which is why Vajrayana is so excellent.
Yeah, and I think it's worth just touching on, in the Maha Yoga and the full kind of expanse of this pure vision practice, you're training yourself, to visualize this palace and the deities, and all of these are symbols representing the aggregates, the elements, the sophisticated understanding of the world according to Abhidharma,
Mm.
which, so what you're training yourself to do, you're sitting on the cushion for hours and hours a day with this visualization, with this knowledge, and you're trying to replace the structure of your mind that sees things incorrectly, right? Like we come in with our own visualization of there are solid beings out here separate from me, and I want to get through here, and I want to get what I want, and I want to destroy my enemies, and all of that point of view. It is like really hardwired into us at this point. We've done it so much. So the Maha Yoga works to undo this by relabeling with more accurate understanding and terminology that these are yidams, this is the five elements or the five dakinis, and so on and so on. And it can be very complicated. And if you love it, get into it. But like I was saying, that to me, that it's much more accessible to just see everything as the Guru. That way you don't have to because you can spend, if you like detail and you like that, then you're in for a treat. You go study Abhidharma and you study Maha Yoga together, and try and put that together and then spend time in that rewiring of your brain. Like, this is not an ordinary house. This is a mandala. These are deities. Some of them are destroying each other or destroying things, and some are, healing things. And these are all the activities of the deities, right? Like that kind of complicated view. And then even the palace, the structures, the pillars, they represent the different faculties of the mind. This is a very sophisticated system, but most of us just don't have time to really do this in any kind of meaningful way. So I think that's why, for me, Guru Yoga has just been the most accessible. It makes the most sense. And a lot of us come from a Judeo-Christian background. So there's a little bit of like similarity to seeing everything as God's will, like, so there's a kind of entry point that I think makes sense for us Westerners, that makes this possible. And then, as you were saying, Joe, that this is um, not the overlay. This is training ourselves to see things more accurately, more in the present moment, and with less conceptual I want and I don't want, based on a delusion of a self.
You're absolutely right. I think it's important to remember to continuously remind ourselves that we think we are seeing the world as it is, as and that we're logical beings. We're operating within this experience, and we are seeing things correctly. This is a fault at the very base level of Buddhism, the very base level of the term Buddha. Because what does Buddha mean? Awake. And if Shakyamuni is a Buddha and I'm not a Buddha, then that means I'm asleep, right? And when you're asleep, you only experience dreams. You only experience your own mind's projection as dreams. You don't, I mean, once in a while, someone will have like a dream, but it's some sort of vision of the actual world. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about ordinary. I go to sleep. I dream I'm at the grocery store and they're totally out of oat milk and I have a little fit or whatever, just get regular life dreams that we have. We're doing that even when we're awake. It's just that because of the way our consciousness works, we are tied to it much more sophisticatedly. So I look at my hand in a dream, I have 5 fingers. I look back at my hand, I only have 3 fingers. That's one of the keys of practicing dream yoga. Here, I look at, in my wakeful state, I look at my hand, I have 5 fingers. I look at my hand later, I still got 5 fingers, unless there's been a bad accident. So it's the kind of thing where this level of reality is still a dream, but it's a lot more coherent. And so it's harder to see as a dream when we compare it to our dream life. But it's very important to recognize we are not seeing the world correctly. We're seeing the world through eyes that have been trained according to the Dharma for hundreds of millions of lifetimes with wrong perception. And the base of that wrong perception is just what you said, the belief in a self as separate from reality. I will tell a little story. I'm a big fan of the English writer John Blofeld, and I suggest that everyone read his spiritual autobiography. It's called The Wheel of Life, a beautifully written book about his path through the Dharma. Really wonderful. He died in 1987, I think, and got to meet all the great masters, Dodrub Chen and Dongjin Rinpoche, and many other lamas and Chinese masters who are long gone now. So amazing book. In one of his books, he tells a little story of something that happened to him. He was driving somewhere and he saw on this hillside this beautiful array of flowers, like all these red flowers. And he was like, wow, that is gorgeous. He stopped the car and looked for a minute and just was like, wow, spring. These, I don't know what kind of flowers are so red, amazing. And then he got back in the car and he drove up that hill. And as he got closer, he realized it was trash. It wasn't flowers at all. And he said, this is how it really is. He saw it as flowers. He believed it was flowers. His reaction, his emotional, mental, psychological reaction was one to flowers. And it was one of happiness. When he drove up the hill and he saw it was trash, his emotional, mental, and psychological reaction was like, ugh! Then later, when he was writing that, or what inspired him to write that passage, he was like, ha ha, both are not true. But one inspires goodness, upliftedness, a relation to the world that's more of a bodhisattva relation, and one inspires the opposite. And that is what pure perception, the key, the reason for pure perception, the reason to practice this, even if it doesn't feel real, even if it feels like artificially caused, to see that the guru wants me to lose my job, the guru wants me to get in a car accident, what a jerk. This kind of thing, like you're saying with guru yoga. The reason to train in this is because it is more beneficial. It is still a construct in a sense, but the construct is both closer to reality because we're all yidams in our inmost essence, and also it's more beneficial. Keeps you motivated on the path, it keeps you living in a more pure environment. And that is very, very good, especially in a time like we are right now when things really feel like they're coming apart. I know I say that every week, but it just keeps going downhill. I went to India and things were okay. I went to come back. My flights are canceled through the Middle East. I have to reroute. I flew all the way around the world. I liked leaving a major carbon footprint, I guess. But it's that kind of thing, right? The world is very challenging. So it makes it more difficult for us to practice pure perception. I refer the listener to previous, maybe 2 times ago or 3 times ago, we talked about the news and our relationship to it. Very important to manage your situation in order to be able to practice pure perception. If you're on a battlefield, your friends are getting blown up, it's much more difficult to practice than if you're in your house and you're vacuuming. And then it really can, surrounded by, look at Damien's room. It's filled with thangkas. It's filled with pictures of lamas. This is very inspiring. And that's why we set up a shrine in our house. That's why we meditate in the same place every day. All these things in order to increase the likelihood that we will see things through a more pure lens. It's still a lens, but it's more conducive to accomplishment on the path.
Yeah, I think it's so important what you were saying about how we are, how this whole thing, this whole construct is wired incorrectly, right? That from the subtlest level to this body, we are actually samsaric formations, and that everything we are perceiving is not exactly how it is, and that our bifurcated brain and dualistic thought, all of this systems are all based on ignorance, built on ignorance. And so when we're practicing the yidam and the seed syllable and the appearance, we're trying to correct this error as we come into experience. Like you say, every day we come out of nowhere and we come into this life, and then we go back into nowhere when we go back to sleep. That process is bound up with ignorance, right? So because of that, we come into birth, into samsara, into a body, into a trap, basically. And that through this process of guru yoga or deity yoga, we're untraining ourselves. We're practicing this process of birth over and over and over and over again without the delusion added to it. Because the more correct view is that we are inseparable from the guru, that we are inseparable from the deity. And what that means is that everything is pure. Everything is already made of light. I mean, this is even coming true in scientific understanding, right?
Mm-hmm.
That there's no here, that things aren't the solid thing we thought that they were. That's already becoming true on so many levels. And so we can tap into that through this kind of understanding and seeing things. Oh, everything is pure. The kind of, yes, of course, there's a relative dealing with your life, and you can kind of keep doing that while holding it all lightly. This is a dream. This is like a dream. That kind of lucid dream training, I think, is also the other easy access point, like guru yoga. Just continually, this is a dream. Don't take it so seriously. Notice how where is this morning when I was eating pancakes for breakfast? It's gone. Like where it just passes, and everything keeps passing, and this body will pass, and everything in our life will pass, and that impermanence is more accurate vision, right? Because we feel like it's gonna last forever in good and bad ways, right? We want the good things to last forever, and we don't want the bad things to last forever. We get very stuck in all of that. And so this is a way of liberating that, getting us closer to, of course, the highest view, which is just direct perception with no filter, with no grasping, with no dualism. But that's extremely hard to do because we're always in our mind. We're always labeling and, working with the kind of discursive relationship with things. So the beauty of the Dharma always is that it uses a skillful means. It brings it in, that to help us, to support us with something we're already doing, and help that thing we're already doing get closer to what we want. This just naked, bare awareness.
Damien's got it going on. What can I say? We're about out of time, so I will leave the reader with or listener with one way you can train in this. And it came to me because of what you just said, Damien. It is true that in our personal experience, when we wake up in the morning, we wake up out of nowhere. We are kind of blank canvas for a little bit. It depends on how much you've got going on. Sometimes you wake up right into thinking, but if you're a practitioner, there's a little gap there some of the time. And in that gap, we get it, the road is splitting and we get a choice. Are we going to do what we always do? Ah, it's Monday, and what am I going to do? Ah, pajama. Or this is a pure experience. And because this happens every day, we get hundreds of opportunities every year. So when you go to sleep at night, you can, do whatever your dream yoga practices is, but before you engage in that, you just think, when I wake up tomorrow, I'm going to arise in a pure realm. I'm going to arise in a pure realm, and I'm going to stay in that as long as I can. And as long as you don't talk, it's usually talking that drags you out, whether it's talking in your mind to yourself or talking to your partner or somebody else, you can keep this going usually. And sometimes you can make it all the way to when you start your session, which for me is like 15 minutes. I got to go out to my hut and stuff. It's, you wake up and you have a choice there. And that choice you can lean toward, I'm not going to judge this. Everything is the guru. In this same practice I'm doing, you're supposed to wake up as an accomplished being. Arise as Vimalamitra. Arise as Longchenpa. Arise as the guru, as Guru Rinpoche, whatever yidam you're practicing. And try to make it as Guru Rinpoche all the way until you do your next thing. And maybe that's get in the shower, maybe it's eat something, drink coffee, whatever it is, start your meditation, whatever it is. Once you can do that a little, you can return to it during the day. And then tomorrow you get another choice, another chance to practice this. And that's like how we can really put it into practice. Maybe you only go 3 minutes, but we got 3 minutes of pure experience in the middle of our, 16-hour day or whatever it is. And then once you can do it a little bit, you might remember that. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You're taking a break. You're like, I'm going to just drink this sparkling water and relax here for a second. And all of a sudden, like, oh, it's still pure. And maybe you can drink that sparkling water for 3 minutes in the middle of your pure experience. And that's how you start to really poke holes in your samsaric world. So I leave it with that. But this has been excellent.
Yeah, that's great. I just wanted to say one thing. You can go back to the previous episode we did on aspirations, but when Joe talks about how an aspiration, you have a thought that you hold for a second and then you let it go and you abide in the direct experience, right? Well, I think this pure vision, like you're saying, is the same way. You can be, I am the Lama. It's not, I am the Lama, I am the Lama, I am the Lama. Like it can be a tendency to like turn this into another stressful conceptual thing. It's just fire that pull back and then let go and then stay in the purity, like you're saying, for as long as you can. And then when you notice you're out of it, you can pull back another arrow and fire again and then get through just like that and kind of string it through your day.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much for watching. As always, please like, share, subscribe. And there's a new function on YouTube. I don't know if you can do it, but it says hype. You slide over from comments and you hype, and you only get a certain number of points per week. But if you would feel inspired to hype our episode, that go a really long way for boosting us in the algorithm. It means it really helped you. So if you feel that way, I would really appreciate if you do that. But no matter what you do or don't do, thank you for watching. We appreciate you. We're a nice little community. I feel connected to all of you. I know Joe does. So we will see you again in a couple weeks.